welcome to LACA's Talking Art series, and the second of our talks is with Jean Pigozzi, who we're delighted to welcome, and the world's owner of the largest African contemporary art collection. And we hope you enjoy his insight into art, collecting, and the contemporary world. Good morning, Jean. Thank you for attending the LACA TAS, or Talking Art series. And this morning we're talking to Jean Pigozzi, who for me is a Renaissance man working for 20th Century Fox, a society photographer, a designer, obsessive collector, and by his own statement, collected friends, companies, and art. And founded the largest African contemporary art collection, 1989, way before Black movement or collections became popular in that area. And my most exciting thing you did was transform a trawler into the Amazon Express. So I wanted to ask the first question to you today. How and did you start in this particular field?
Well, I'm always been a collector from the day I could walk. I used to collect stones on the beach. Then I collected little bottles of alcohol, which they used to give in first class on the plane, even if I've never touched alcohol in my life. Then I had a horrible collection of stamps. I mean, I collected anything I could collect. And then when I went to Harvard, I started collecting little pieces of art that I would buy on the weekend when I would go to New York. So I bought a little Sol LeWitt drawing, a little Ed Ruscha drawing, some little things, okay? And then slowly, I built up a collection like a good dentist from Minneapolis. And, you know, I had all the right names, a little Warhol, a little Clemente, a little this, a little that. But it wasn't that interesting. And then I became friends with Charles Saatchi, and Charles Saatchi said, yeah, that's okay. But you know, there's another 7,000 hedge fund guys or dentists from Glasgow that have exactly the same collection, so why bother? He said, you have to specialize. So my first idea, because I'm cheap, was to buy only paintings that cost, or a piece of art that cost less than $5,000, but it turns out it was very complicated. So about 32 years ago, I was in Paris, and there was a show called Les Magiciens de la Terre, which was a show where they had emerging art from India, Australia, Africa, New Zealand, and also from London, Berlin, New York, Los Angeles. And I saw these incredible pieces from Africa. And, you know, for me, African art was what I see at the, you know, the British museums or at the Metropolitan, you know, beautiful sculptures, wood sculptures, or the dog with the nails or gold thing, but not crazy paintings or model of crazy buildings like Bodis Kingelez or painted by Sherry Samba, or beautiful drawings by Bouli Boisbré. I never saw that before, so I got completely excited. So I saw this show the day it was closing. So the day after, I called the Pompidou Museum and I said, you know, what are you going to do with all these African things? They said, well, actually they're owned by Canal Plus, which is like Sky in France. Mm-hmm. But if you want, you can meet the curator. And I said, sure. So I met André Magnan. And I said, André, what are you doing? He said, well, my dream would be to keep on going doing this collection. I said, fine. So I hired André, and for 23 years, André went up and down Africa, and together we built this, I hope, great collection. So that's the story.
Ah, fantastic. And the other thing I wanted to, obviously you've talked about the inspiration and how you started, and predominantly was in Africa, and then recently a continent away, you went into Japanese contemporary. And how did that transition occur?
Well, the interesting thing is that the African collection was done in a pre-internet, pre-everything. So and also we bought 100% of all the pieces directly from the artist. So then I went to China a few times, I went to Japan a few times, and then I met Murakami in New York, and I said, you know, are they interesting young Japanese artists? He said, well, yeah. Actually, I have a company that's called the Kai Kai Kiki, and also once a year, I do something that's called Geisai. And Geisai, he rents a huge building the size of a football field, and people come and rent very small spaces for about 50 pounds, and for one day they can show whatever they want. So I went to Tokyo, I saw this. I mean, there might have been 1,000 people there, artists. I mean, perhaps 15 of them were interesting. So I bought a few of them. And then he does a competition, and I ended up buying number 2 and number 9 or something. So then slowly, I started going to Japan and meeting with galleries and all that. But it's very complicated. You know, they couldn't understand why this big foreigner, which they call gaijin, would be interested in their art. So they, you know, so Japanese, they would show you one painting and then, oh, I want to see another. It was really, really complicated. But now, after 10 years and getting their trust and all that, I have also built, I think, a very interesting collection of Japanese artists born after 1985. You know, in Japan, if you're less than 90 years old, you're not considered interesting. So young artists struggle in Japan because nobody's really that interested in them. But I think that there's some incredible work. And you know, in Japan, there's two layers. You know, the first one is the beautiful geishas, the cherry blossom, Mount Fuji, beautiful food, this and that. And underneath, there's people being tied up and really weird stuff. Okay, so if you look at all of these paintings, on the surface, they look completely normal. And if you scratch a little bit, you discover there's some weird little things going on and all that. The second thing that's interesting is that about 40% of my collection of Japanese artists is done by women, which I didn't know because somebody's called Christina or Maria. I know they're a woman, but in Japan, I can't really tell the difference between the name of a man or a woman. So I have a large collection of interesting women's painting, which is in Africa, I only have like 5% of my collection, or 6%, I don't know, is women, but the Japanese is very, very high. So this is a very interesting, I think it's a very interesting collection I'm putting together. And bizarrely enough, nobody even in Japan seems to be intrigued by very young Japanese artists. People buy 1 or 2 pieces, but I really focus, and we have found some incredible things.
Well, that's interesting that Takashi had already picked up on that and was investigating it, and you know, could direct you towards what he thought. That's very insightful, considering the cultural differences, because in China there are a lot of contemporary artists and emerging artists, and up until recently they were very influenced by past politics. Now they're becoming artists. Now they start to paint, and they infuse their culture, but with a modern insight. And then you did the Congo Japan exhibit. Tell us a little a bit about that.
Well, I had the great luck of meeting Carsten Höller, and we did a show. We did it in Grenoble and then at the garage in Moscow. That was called JapanCongo. And Carsten built these 2 kind of round, strange things that were divided exactly by my size, 1.92 m in the middle. And on the right, he put all the Japanese art. No, I think on the left, all the Japanese art. And on the right, all art coming from Congo. And it was an amazing show. And the strange thing is, somebody at night would have gone and moved some of the paintings from left to right and right to left, you would not have known. Obviously, if it's a painting of a geisha or some, you know, an African band, you would know. But some of the paintings were, strange enough, quite similar, which was really an interesting thing. And I love the idea of mixing these 2 cultures. And I wish I could. I saw Carsten a week ago, and we are ready if somebody wants to do this show again, because it was so fabulous.
Maybe we can organize trying to get that to London, because I think that
I
would
would love
be
that.
interesting. And it's interesting that the two cultures, as you say, because you've got some African artists, you said yourself to me, that are still painting in villages with chickens in amongst their art products, and so different, such a different structure of societies to the Japanese, who are so meticulous in their way they work. So it's a very
Well, I'll tell you the other interesting thing, that when I started collecting 30 years ago, the African artists, none of them had gone to art school. There was pre-internet, so I don't know if they knew who Warhol or Clifford Still or Renoir was. They might have seen something in magazines or something like that, but not much. Now, on the other side, the Japanese go to, you know, calligraphy school for 5 years. They know every artist, you know, every most obscure Yves Klein painting. They know more about art than the director of the MoMA, and they know everything. Now, you were speaking about Chinese. You know, the Chinese, when it opened, they saw Warhol and Liechtenstein. So there's a million painters that paint like Warhol and Liechtenstein. In Japan, it happened the same thing at the beginning of the 19th century, where they saw the Impressionists, so there were tons of Japanese Impressionists. But I think with this new generation is much more, you know, there's some manga, but I have very little manga, but a lot of them is kind of all Japanese traditional painting with a new wrapping around it, a new or completely different, which I find very, very interesting, because it's quite unusual. And I find the quality and the imagination of the Japanese artists much, much more interesting than the Chinese. So that's why I only own one Chinese painting, and I own hundreds of Japanese paintings.
Okay. And then you you donated an amazing body of works of contemporary pieces of African art to MoMA in New York. And I wanted to ask you, are you hopeful now that this will initiate other curators from contemporary museums? I mean, Guggenheim has already done a fantastic mask exhibition in Venice, African masks. And do you hope that for the future now, you've initiated collecting in this field on a global basis?
What is interesting is that neither the Pompidou, neither the Tate, neither MoMA, neither the Metropolitan, neither the museums in Los Angeles, no museum had a curator or a department for contemporary African art, zero. So they had Chinese, Japanese, you know, Western Europe, North Europe, whatever you want, South American, okay, no African, zero, okay? So they completely missed contemporary African art. So Glenn Lowry of the MoMA and his curator, Miss Suzuki, came to see me. I don't know how it happened, a few years ago, and they said, you know, Jean, can we do something together? I said, yeah, sure. So we put these pieces, this collection together, and I gave it to them. And they already have put 4 pieces now in the show that they have at the museum. And in the next 30 years, they will show other things. And also we did a big show with Bodis Tingeles 2 years ago at the MoMA, which had more than 1,100,000 people came over to see it. So now I hope that it's going to wake up the Tate and Pompidou and other museums to do the same thing. But it's slow going, and I don't think they don't seem to be rushing, but I don't really care. I'm very happy with what we did with the MoMA, and we're working on another show, and I'm working on another big show with the Brooklyn Museum in New York, and we're working on many other shows. So, I mean, I have done dozens and dozens. We did a big show at the Guggenheim in Bilbao. We did a big show at the Fondation Vuitton in Paris. I did many things at the Fondation Cartier. I mean, I've shown these African artists all around the world, so I have no problem with that. But then the museums wake up to start doing real collection. I only see the MoMA doing this up to now. There might be other ones, but I don't know.
I think you've definitely made them put their toe in the water and put their thinking hat on about it anyway. It's an expose, and that's a start. And then finally, I wanted to say, for instance, at the moment, LACA has just connected to an online emerging African photographic gallery. So young people from various continents, I think the images are startling. As you say, the colors and the impact is so visual, and I hope everybody will enjoy that. But for you, is there still a part of the collection that you feel is a vacance that you can need to fill, or are you going to go in a new direction, or are you concentrating on Africa?
No, you know, Africa and Japan are so vast that it can keep me going for another 20 years. But it's slightly different now, because Africa, there's you know, there's galleries now, and there's so it's a bit different. I like to buy directly from the artist, which was an interesting experience. Now it's a little bit different, but I still buy things, and I still find new artists. I was out of the blue, some weirdo collector, curator, I don't know what he is, just sent me something from Kinshasa. Usually 90% of what I get on the internet is crap. But this guy seems quite interesting. But, you know, he's also completely designed. 3 times I asked him what the price of the paintings are and what the dimensions are. He doesn't, you know, it's not easy, okay? But so I see, yeah, you know, eventually we'll find, but the paintings are quite interesting. So sometimes out of the blue, some interesting things arrive. And then in Japan, galleries send me stuff, and there too, sometimes the entire thing is written in Japanese. There's not even a picture of the painting, so I don't know what it is. But you know, it's all very. It's not like walking, you know, in Soho, and you walk into a gallery and you can buy a Warhol and you give them a check for $30 million. You can buy it, or going to Christie's or something like that. These 2 collections take a lot of work, you know, a lot of. I mean, the African one was beyond complicated, and the Japanese one is not so easy because the English is not so good. The shipping, the stuff is complicated and very expensive. I mean, but it's doable. But I kind of like the challenge of doing something that's a bit more complicated than normal collection. You just go out and pay.
I mean, buying something in the Congo can't be easy.
No.
And tell us
even now.
No, even now. And maybe ask you a little about the person standing behind you, where you obviously keep your business cards.
No, these are backstage passes from rock and roll concerts, or from, so this nice lady here is a lady, it's based on a photograph of CDB.
Little bit.
The hat is from something else.
John,
and,
you need to turn it a little bit more. We've got half of her.
Okay, so there she is.
Ah, yeah.
Can you see her?
I see.
But the hat.
Yeah.
The hat is not hers. I put on the hat, and then you see all these business cards here, and then you can. Okay.
Definitely so she keeps dressed for Valentine.
Yeah, she keeps me company. Okay.
Well, Jean, thank you for keeping us company today. It was a pleasure to talk to you again. And we look forward to working with you further in the future. And we definitely do something which is an actual exhibition as well as online. And wish you a wonderful day, and we'll be in touch.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye, Jean. Bye-bye. Thank you.